What's up everyone, back for another beer review, and today I will be reviewing a beer from the Pabst Brewing Company, and they're out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and this is their Pabst Blue Ribbon, otherwise known as PBR. So this is an American lager that comes in at 4.8% alcohol by volume, 10 IBUs, and at the time of review, I don't know exactly how old this can is, but it does have a best by date of February 14th of 2022. And right now I'm about three and a half weeks away from that date. So we should be fine. And I want to give a huge thanks and shout out to a couple good friends of mine and fellow beer tubers, Dan and Mike over at FLX Beer Reviews, for hooking me up with this one. I'll post a link in the description box to their channel. Great guys, great individuals, and I hung out with them recently. We shot a bunch of reviews, which by the time I post this review, you probably will see 4 or 5 from them on my channel and a couple on theirs. But when I was hanging out with them, the day before, I actually posted a review of Yuengling Traditional Lager, and it was another good friend of mine and fellow beer tuber, Chris, over at Off the 10th, who recommended me reviewing Pabst Blue Ribbon, and that's because in that video, I was like, if anybody has any suggestions, let me know. And he's like, I want to see you review PBR. So here we are, Chris. Full disclosure, I've had this one before, right? Like, totally had this one before. I'm sure all of you have had this one before, and I enjoy it for what it is. And I believe Mike was the one who gave me this, because this is like his favorite low ABV crusher lager, so to speak. And I was like, you know what? I'll just take a can from him, and he was so gracious to give me one of his cans. But anyway, yeah, we're going to review this one properly. But yeah, I've had this one before. Funny story, I'll tell it as I'm cracking open pouring. I actually did a blind beer tasting about 8 or 9 years ago. I was hanging out with some family members. It was my cousin's birthday, and we were at a bar that had like a banquet area, and they knew I was into craft beer, so they would always give me shit about drinking the fancy stuff and, oh, you're a beer snob, this and that. I was like, whatever, I forget what I was. I think I was drinking like Yuengling or something that day. But they brought me like tasters of 5 different lagers, and they're like, we want to see if you can tell which one's PBR. And I'm like, why? Like, I don't like drink PBR all the time or anything, but they brought me 5 tasters, and I don't remember all the beers, but I do remember there was PBR, there was Molson Canadian, Labatt Blue, I think Budweiser, Bud Light, and then like Miller, maybe Coors Banquet. It was one of those beers. But without question, I nailed PBR. I was like, this is PBR. It's way better than the rest. And they're like, I can't believe it. But in that same tasting, hated Molson Canadian and hate it to this day. Maybe I'll review that one next. I don't know. I just don't like Molson Canadian. Anyway, yeah, it's PBR. You know, a couple people said in the hams review that I did that it's the first time you could see my face through the glass because it was so clear. Maybe this is the second time. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it's a golden straw color. Some people would say it looks like piss. Had about a finger of a bright white head that is now dissipated to a thin film. Lots of carbonation bubbles. Yeah, it's PBR. It's the American lager. It's good nose. Yeah, so it's exactly what you expect out of a beer like this. It's a little bit of like a corny sensation, grainy, little bit of like maybe a bready thing going on. Lager funk, slight floral tinge, lemony. It's funny because when I review any kind of like American Adjunct Lager, American Lager, PBR, or hams, or Jenny Cream Ale, even though it's a cream ale, not technically a lager, even though it kind of is. When I review anything like that, Coors Banquet, Miller High Life, they all have a very similar smell to them. It all depends on the taste of the beer and like the finish for me, if I enjoy one more than the next, because they're all very similar to my stupid palate. But yeah, this smells very inoffensive. There's a little bit of like a red apple core, very inoffensive. Doesn't smell, like amazing or anything, but it just smells like it's going to be a low ABV crusher of a beer. That's kind of what you're expecting from this beer. It's what I'm expecting. So cheers, everybody, and thanks again to Mike for the can. Yeah, I would just say I could crush a bunch of these. I don't anymore because I'm going to say I'm not allowed. I shouldn't. But yeah, this is one of those beers that you pick up because it's cheap. You can drink a lot of them because it's low ABV and not get hammered. And this is just a good fridge beer. Body in this one's like lower side of medium body, a little bit bigger, not even 5%. It's nice. It's crisp. It's clean. It's really refreshing. It's relatively clean. There's a little bit of like a lingering sweetness on the back, but there's no astringency on the palate or anything. Right front, there's grainy, corny, slightly bready malt character. Right after that, I'm hit with like a red apple core, little lemon zest, and maybe a touch of like a floral aspect. Finish is slightly dry, no bitterness really to speak of. It leans a little bit sweeter because it is an American Adjunct Lager, and they typically lean sweeter for me. But it's, you know, it's not cloying or anything. This is not like drinking a pastry stout or something crazy where you drink like a half can, you're like, oh my God. No, it's not. It's just a little bit sweeter. I mean, I could easily drink the rest of this on camera in about 10 seconds and have no issues, but I'm not going to do that. Not going to do that. But yeah, it's PBR. Listen, we've all had PBR. If you're watching this review, I'm sure you've had PBR. If not, you've heard about PBR. For a lot of time, people would be like, oh, it's a hipster beer, blah, 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 whatever. It's a low ABV crusher of a lager that's pretty damn good and appropriately priced, and I have no issues with it. This is probably my top 3 to 5 of like American Adjunct Lagers or American Lagers. Up there is Coors Banquet, Miller High Life. We'll throw Jenny Cream Ale, even though it's a cream ale and not like a strict lager. I'll throw that up there. This, and probably Hamm's would like round out my top 5. Narragansett, which a good friend of mine and viewer of the channel, Jeff, mentioned that when I reviewed that one. That's pretty good. So there's a good, you know, for me, there's a good like 5 to 7 cheap, low ABV lagers that I can easily drink. They're inoffensive. They're made for drinking. I know that sounds stupid because I'm a beer tuber, I have a beer reviewing channel, and it's like, well, what the hell else would it be? You know what I mean? It's you drink a 6-pack of this, watch it in your favorite sports ball. I love hockey and football, and yeah, I could take down a 6-pack of this over a 2-3 hour period, be feeling good, but not too crazy, and you know, it's not going to wreck my palate, and it's very easy. So I don't know. This is a good palate cleanser too. Like a lot of times, if you go to a beer share or whatever, a lot of people drink water, which I do, but it's good to bring in a beer like this and kind of refresh the palate as well. So not much more to say about it. Now, I always say this when it comes to American lagers or American Adjunct Lagers. There's 2 ratings I always give. I give stylistically what I think in terms of like an American lager, American Adjunct Lager, and then what I think about this beer as far as my own personal preference. Personal preference always lower for the style because it's not my favorite style, never will be. But I'd say Pabst Blue Ribbon, aka PBR. Stylistically, I'd go like 4.5 on this, maybe a high 4.5, like 4.6. For my own personal preference, I have no problems giving this a high 3.5 out of 5. I go 3.6 out of 5. I think that's fair. I think I don't like this probably as much as like Miller High Life, maybe Coors Banquet. It's kind of in that realm though, although not as good to my palate, just slightly below those beers, but pretty damn good. Price and availability all over. Like most people can get PBR, especially if you're here in the US. And price point, I believe in my area, it's like $8 or $9 for a 12-pack and like $16 to $17 for a 30-rack, although you can probably find it cheaper in your neck of the woods. I'm in, you know, Western New York State, so a little bit more expensive, but it's pretty much like 50 to 60 cents a can. That's pretty much what you're looking for a beer like this, and yeah, it's fine. So if you've had this one before, post in the comment section. The funny thing is I'll say that and I'll have X amount of views and probably like 1/10 of the amount of comments, even though most people that watch us will already have had this beer. And I just want to hear what you guys think about this. Where does this land for you in terms of like adjunct lagers? If you're going to go for a low, cheap ABV, big macro beer, is this at the top of the food chain for you? Is it in the middle? You don't touch it because you don't like it? For me, I think it's fine for what it is. And it's definitely I would say it's in my top 5. Top 5 for the style. So not much more to say about this one. Huge thanks to Mike for the can. I always chuckle because like, you know, I'm so grateful that Mike gave me a can, but I was going to go buy a can regardless. But it would just so happen that he had it because it's his low ABV crusher. So I do thank Mike for hooking me up with this one, but it's not like some crazy whale beer. But I do appreciate it, Mike. Anyway, appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review. I didn't even talk about the ABV, and I typically don't in reviews like this because 4.8%, you're not meant to taste it. So anyway, till next one. Cheers.